Chinese people are panic buying salt because of Fukushima's nuclear wastewater release. But is it even necessary? Welcome to China Insider, I'm David Zhang. In what I can only describe as Pavlov's dog, conditioned to salivate at hearing the sound of a bill, the Chinese population and the CCP's constant brainwashing makes everyone in China feel like sleeper agents, triggered by a keyword, Japan. So here comes the panic buying of salt, because they think that Fukushima's yearly water release, which will happen for the next 30 years, requires them to store enough salt to fill Lake Michigan. Now, we have grandpas here and grandmas buying heavy amounts of salt. Store shelves are empty in some stores. It's triggering a flashback to 2011 when the tsunami destroyed the power of the Fukushima plant. China was also panic buying salt back then, and they're doing it again now. Allegedly, other than storing for consumption, some rumors say that once you cover your entire body with salt, it's going to help you fight off radiation, which prompted to this meme. Slice yourself every 2 inches, apply salt all over your body's surface, make sure to get it all over those nooks and crannies like your armpit, elbow, and you know where else, and then just hang yourself on a meat hook for 7 days in a well-ventilated area. After drying, it will become radiation resistant. Tip: add peppercorn, star anise, and bay leaves for maximum radiation protection. Babe, that's not radiation, that's curing your meat. Now, in one social media post, 300 pallets of salt, you can see the picture here, each pallet contains about 40 bags of salt. Each of them weigh about 500 grams, and it was sold out in 10 minutes. Look, I eat a lot of salt, okay? I love salt, but that one Morton salt container will last me 2 years. So what in the name of communism is somebody supposed to do with crates of salt? 40 bags of them. Someone told me that a customer bought 60 pallets of salt. That's like 240 bags of 500 grams each. That's enough to feed 5 generations of people in China. But, you know, I guess this is how they're stimulating the economy now. Fear buying, panic buying. Now, according to screenshots online, a salt store sold 780,000 orders of salt online. And this is the first store. It reached a stunning total of 13.8 million yuan in sales. That's close to $2 million worth of orders in one live stream. Another store similarly sold more, 1.13 million orders, adding to 20 million yuan in sales. So that's about $2.8 million. So that's a total of 80 million visitors for the two stores combined. While on the streets, people line up to buy from truck loaded with salt bags. Now, China Salt Group, allegedly, I think this is what controls the salt production or consumption, I don't know, but they've released a statement calling for rational reactions and not blindly panic buying. But again, with this trigger of Japan, the hysteria of salt containing Fukushima waste material, I just don't see the panic buying stopping anytime soon. Let's be honest, China should be the last person or country to be virtue signaling about nuclear wastewater. Its own power plants released 65 times more waste compared to the one in Japan. The Japanese Fukushima plant has been approved by the IAEA, which is the UN International Atomic Energy Agency, to release the wastewater, which actually technically you can't call it wastewater, more like it's cooling water that's been treated. And after treatment, it's up to standard. In fact, it's much lower than the standards of other power plants around the world. But again, after the CCP's campaign against Japan's release of Fukushima water failed in recent months, what they're doing now is they're going to ban all imports of all Japanese seafood products. So the CCP ordered banning of all imports today, right? And it's effective immediately. But the funny thing is, this water release from Fukushima will last for 30 years based on how much they will release yearly. Will China truly be okay not to import any Japanese seafood products for 30 years? What about all those high-end restaurants serving sushi-grade tuna or salmon? Even if the Japanese government has a high standard of treatment and the fishes are fine, the Chinese government is still not going to let this one up. This opportunity to rile up the nationalistic feelings, and this hysteria ladder ride will actually end up with the CCP caught in its own panties. Now, China remains adamant in its opposition to Japan's nuclear waste release, right? Not because of the environmental reasons, but because of the whole propaganda with the nationalistic hatred, which is needed to keep the people in China, well, at least targeting something to hate. But because of the history of World War II, Japan remains a priority propaganda device for the CCP. It's an easy one, too. That's why I said it's like a trigger word, right, for the sleeper agents. Everyone just wakes up hearing the sound of Japan, right? Japan this, Japan that. Now, Chinese people living close to the coast, they're panic buying large amounts of salt because, the logic behind it is if seawater gets contaminated, the salt that gets produced is obviously going to be contaminated as well. So they have to store enough salt. Well, this logic in itself is flawed, but there's a bigger logical discrepancy here. It lacks scientific thinking. So think about it. If you go to the extreme to ban Japanese sea products because you say the water will be unsafe, wouldn't you also have to ban every single other products out there from every country connected by the ocean? Apparently, in a Tsinghua University simulation, the water contamination takes about 240 days before it reaches China. That means China, in 240 days, should stop eating its own seafood products. And the Chinese authorities claim that in the same study, in 3 years' time, the amount of release will cover the entire Pacific Ocean. What, you're just going to go out and ban all seafood products? Sure, let's see if you can. That would include, as water flows, right, Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, Australia, Singapore, Malaysia, the United States, Canada, Mexico. I mean, water flows. That's the entire concept of the ocean, right? Water flows, ponds, lakes, rivers, whatever, they all flow into the ocean, and then the ocean water flows. So the entire world will technically be contaminated. Does that mean the CCP from this point on will be banning all seafood products out there? Why is it that they only ban products from Japan? Well, obviously, this is an interesting question. We know it's because of propaganda, but one of Bloomberg's reporter actually asked this question to the Chinese Foreign Ministry, the spokesperson Wang Wenbing, who, of course, provided a non-answer. They typically do this to avoid answering the real question. But in fact, this is why we say that there's a logical flaw here. Like, it doesn't make sense, right? Let's be realistic. Here are the facts. Chinese nuclear waste output is many times higher than the Fukushima plant. In fact, many other power plants around the world have a higher output when it comes to releasing the water. Now, according to an expert, this release of water from Fukushima is called primary cooling water, and it actually goes through the nuclear reactor core. Now, before that water is released into the ocean, it has to be filtered through a system that removes all of the radioactive material. And the only one that stays and remains is called tritium. And it's worth noting that the radioactive level is quite low, especially when you dilute it with ocean water before it's released, it's safe. But that's the standard to measure tritium level across the board. Now, according to a document compiled by the Japanese government, Fukushima has some of the lowest amounts of released radioactive material. Take China's Taishan 3rd nuclear power station. Its waste output in 2020 was 143 trillion becquerels. Becquerel is the unit of measurement for the radioactivity of tritium. By comparison, Japan's Fukushima will only release 2.2 trillion becquerels each year. So China's power station itself releases almost 65 times the amount of nuclear cooling water than the Japan one. And that's not all. Another example from China. In 2021, water containing about 112 trillion becquerels of tritium was also released from Guangdong province's Yanjiang plant, while 102 trillion becquerels was released from the Ningde nuclear power plants in Fujian province. So China's they're not in any position to criticize Japan. And the only reason, as we said, they're doing so is because of the propaganda and the political hatred towards Japan. And that's it. So here's another lie that the CCP put out, and it seems the Chinese people are responding by buying salt, which looks absolutely ridiculous because this whole thing is a panic over nothing. It's fear-mongering. Only works in China. And I guess that's what they wanted to achieve, consumerism. Anyways, that's it today on the topic of why Chinese people are panic buying salt. If you enjoyed the content, leave a like, comment below what your thoughts are, and subscribe to our channel. As always, thank you so much for watching China Insider. David Zhang. We'll see you next time.